Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. In November 2004, Craig Bennett finally broke his silence about the events that had haunted him for nearly 8 years. As a successful business professional in his early 30s with an MBA degree, Craig had built his career and reputation on rational analysis and logical thinking. Yet what transpired during the winter of 1996 in a suburban Oregon house would challenge everything he thought he knew about reality, leading to years of careful self-reflection before he could bring himself to share his story. The events began in September 1996 when Craig and his new wife Cynthia, married after 3 years together, found themselves searching for a condo in the Portland suburbs. Cynthia's grandparents offered a practical solution. They could house-sit their single-story suburban home during the elderly couple's annual winter migration to Texas. For the busy newlyweds, the arrangement seemed ideal, providing a comfortable temporary residence in their preferred suburban area while they conducted their housing search. The house itself was unremarkable, a typical mid-1960s suburban one-level neighbourhood house. Cynthia's grandparents had only moved into the property a year before, and its history prior to their ownership remained unknown to the family. The only peculiarity anyone had noted was a touch-sensitive lamp with the habit of activating itself, though at the time this seemed more like an electrical quirk than anything supernatural. The first 2 weeks passed uneventfully. The young couple settled into the spare bedroom at the back of the house, their busy lives leaving them little time at home except for sleeping. But as autumn deepened and October approached, the peaceful sanctuary began to reveal a more unsettling side. Craig's first encounter with the unexplainable came in the dead of night. He awoke suddenly, his heart pounding under the weight of an uncanny, unshakable dread. The darkness felt heavy, oppressive, as he strained to identify what had pulled him from sleep. Every instinct suggested an intruder might have entered the house, yet as he listened intently, the house remained silent. Too silent. Despite the absence of sound, Craig couldn't shake the overwhelming sensation that someone was moving down the hallway with agonising slowness. Just as he was about to dismiss his fears and attempt to return to sleep, a head slowly emerged from around the doorframe, peering into the bedroom. Panic galvanised him into action. His first thought was to find a weapon, leading him to grab an old BB gun from under the bed, a childhood relic that now seemed absurdly inadequate. Craig lunged for the light switch, flooding the room with sudden brightness, then charged into the hallway wielding his makeshift weapon like a baseball bat. The hallway stood empty. A thorough search of the house showed all doors and windows securely locked, no signs of intrusion, and nothing out of place. His wife, awakened by the commotion, found the sight of her husband patrolling in his underwear, wielding a BB gun, more amusing than alarming. For years afterward, she would tease him about this incident, but for Craig, this was only the beginning of a series of increasingly disturbing encounters. The couple's evening routine included watching television from their bed, with a small dresser positioned at the foot of the bed supporting the TV. Craig, a self-described night owl, typically stayed awake 1 to 2 hours after Cynthia fell asleep. It was during these solitary late-night sessions that the true nature of their house guests began to manifest. The first appearance seemed innocent enough. What appeared to be a patch of fog, roughly the size of a watermelon, hovering near the ceiling in the upper right corner of the room. Craig initially dismissed it as eye strain, expecting it to move with his gaze like an after-image when he casually glanced to the other side of the room. When it remained fixed in place, he tried to rationalise it as a reflection from the television screen, still maintaining his composure and scientific mindset. But turning off the TV did nothing to disperse the mysterious cloud, and this first attempt at debunking only served to heighten his growing sense of unease. The fog's behaviour followed a consistent pattern during its appearances. It would typically begin in the upper right corner of the room near the ceiling, then slowly drift toward the centre of the room, moving directly over the television. What made the experience particularly unsettling was the fog's apparent purposefulness. It never strayed towards Craig's end of the room, instead maintaining its patrol of the area near the TV. The movement wasn't continuous, but rather a slow, deliberate drift that suggested an intelligence behind its actions. When the smaller fog apparition appeared, approximately the size of a soccer ball, it would move independently of its larger companion, as if the two were performing a carefully choreographed but separate dance through the air. Neither formation maintained a perfect spherical shape. Instead, they seemed to undulate slightly as they moved, their edges soft and indistinct, but their overall forms maintaining consistent sizes. The psychological toll of these nightly visitations became increasingly severe. Craig found himself developing specific coping mechanisms. He would try to avoid looking directly at the apparitions while simultaneously finding it impossible to ignore their presence. The television became both a distraction and a comfort, its artificial light and sound providing a tenuous connection to the normal world. Night after night, he would attempt to focus on the TV programs, all while the fog performed its silent parade in his peripheral vision. Chronic sleep deprivation began to set in as he stayed up later and later, unable to rest with the ethereal visitors performing their silent patrol. What made the experience particularly isolating was Craig's academic and professional background. Having achieved his MBA and priding himself on his scientific, analytical approach to life, he found himself trapped between the undeniable reality of his experiences and his inability to reconcile them with his worldview. The fear of being considered mentally unstable prevented him from sharing his experiences with anyone, even as the phenomena continued night after night. The situation reached its terrifying climax one night when Craig, frustrated by exhaustion, attempted to ignore the floating apparitions and force himself to sleep. After 4 failed attempts to turn off the TV and rest, his irritation finally overcame his fear. "This is ridiculous," he thought to himself. "I'm just going to turn the TV off, ignore those stupid things, and go to sleep." As he finally began to drift off, a voice hissed directly into his ear, its words dripping with sarcastic malice. "Yes, so our guest can rest." The voice itself possessed qualities that Craig struggled to describe even years later. While it seemed to originate from within his right ear, it carried an unmistakably external quality that distinguished it from internal thoughts or auditory hallucinations. The sarcastic tone and drawn-out hissing of the words suggested not just intelligence, but a malevolent awareness of his presence and his futile attempts to ignore the phenomena. Fighting back tears of fear and frustration, Craig remained awake for the remainder of the night, his rational worldview shattered by the undeniable reality of what he had experienced. Relief came unexpectedly When Cynthia's grandparents returned early from Texas after their fifth-wheel trailer overturned in a freak windstorm. The Bennetts moved out shortly after, and the frightening phenomena ceased entirely in their new home. However, subsequent events suggested that whatever presence had tormented Craig remained active in the house. Years later, Cynthia's grandmother confided her own encounter, waking to find a male figure standing at the foot of her bed. Her screams awakened her husband, who turned on the lights and searched the house thoroughly. Though they found nothing and all entrances remained secure, the grandmother remained convinced of what she had seen. Being practical people, not given to belief in ghosts or supernatural contemplations, they ultimately figured she must have imagined it, though she personally continued to swear there had been someone there. The ongoing electronics disturbances in the house provided additional evidence of unexplained activity. The touch-sensitive lamp continued its habit of self-activation, and now the living room television had joined in the phenomena, turning itself on without explanation. During a later visit, Cynthia experienced this firsthand. Hearing the TV activate in the living room, she went to greet who she assumed was her grandfather, only to find an empty room. A search of the house revealed her grandfather fast asleep in his bedroom, where he had been resting for several hours. When questioned about the incident, her grandmother's casual response, "Oh, that funny thing just does that sometimes," suggested a resigned acceptance of the house's peculiarities. After 7 years of silence, Craig finally shared his experiences with his wife in 2003. Cynthia's response was revealing. While she had never witnessed the fog-like apparitions herself, she had always felt an oppressive sense of being watched during their stay in the house. The admission brought Craig a measure of validation, though he remained cautious about sharing his story more broadly. As of November 2004, when Craig documented these events, he remained uncertain whether to attribute the episodes to coincidence, though his experiences made that explanation difficult to accept. Where he had once been sceptical of ghost stories, he no longer patronised those who claimed similar encounters. Instead, he kept his silence, carrying with him only one certainty: the hope that he would never experience anything like it again.